Subscribe if these rescue stories inspire you, because what happened next in Sarah Chin's backyard would change everything she thought she knew about the bond between species. The morning started like any other Tuesday in the suburbs of Anchorage, Alaska. Sarah Chin was sipping her coffee at the kitchen window, watching her 3-year-old golden retriever, Copper, patrol their fenced backyard with his usual enthusiasm. The October air carried the first hints of winter, and the birch trees were already surrendering their golden leaves to the inevitable march towards snow season. Sarah had adopted Copper from a local shelter 2 years ago, and his gentle nature had made him the perfect companion for her quiet life as a freelance graphic designer working from home. What she witnessed next would forever alter her understanding of animal instincts and interspecies compassion. Copper suddenly stopped his morning routine and stood perfectly still, his ears perked forward in that distinctive way that meant he had detected something significant. Sarah watched as he trotted purposefully toward the far corner of their yard, near the old spruce tree that had weathered countless Alaskan storms. His tail wasn't wagging with excitement, nor was his body language suggesting he had found something to play with. Instead, there was something almost reverent in his approach, a careful deliberation that made Sarah set down her coffee mug and pay closer attention. Copper disappeared behind the low-hanging branches of the spruce, and for several minutes, Sarah heard nothing but the distant sounds of morning traffic and the occasional call of ravens in the neighborhood. Then she heard it, a sound that made her blood run cold. The unmistakable cry of a bird of prey, but not just any bird. This was the piercing, distinctive call of a bald eagle, and it was coming from her backyard. Sarah grabbed her jacket and rushed outside, her mind racing through possibilities. Bald eagles were not uncommon in Alaska, but they typically stayed near water sources and wilderness areas, not suburban neighborhoods. As she approached the spruce tree, calling Coppa's name softly, she could hear the eagle's cries becoming more frequent and increasingly distressed. When she finally rounded the tree and saw what Copper had discovered, her breath caught in her throat. There, partially hidden beneath the lower branches, was a magnificent bald eagle. Even in its compromised state, the bird was breathtaking. Its white head feathers were pristine despite the circumstances, and its dark brown body feathers caught the morning light with an almost ethereal quality. But it was immediately clear that something was terribly wrong. The eagle was lying on its side, one wing extended at an unnatural angle, and its breathing was labored and shallow. Most remarkably, Copper was lying down beside the injured bird, not touching it but maintaining a protective presence that seemed to calm the normally fierce predator. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Copper, who would typically investigate any new creature with enthusiastic sniffing and playful energy, was instead lying perfectly still, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. His eyes moved between Sarah and the eagle, and she could swear she saw something resembling concern in his expression. The eagle, despite its obvious pain and vulnerability, was not showing the aggressive behavior she would have expected from such a powerful wild animal. Instead, it seemed to be drawing comfort from Coppa's presence. Moving slowly and speaking in the softest voice she could manage, Sarah approached the unlikely pair. The eagle's eyes tracked her movement, alert and intelligent despite its condition. She could see now that the wing injury was severe, likely the result of a collision with a vehicle or power line. The bird would need immediate professional help if it was going to survive. But as she reached for her phone to call the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, something extraordinary happened. When Sarah took a step back to make the call, Copper immediately stood and positioned himself between her and the eagle. It wasn't aggressive behavior, but it was unmistakably protective. He looked at her with an expression that seemed to say, "I found this creature, and I'm responsible for its safety." The eagle, sensing the shift in dynamics, made a soft sound that was neither cry nor call, but something almost conversational, as if it was communicating with Copper in a language only they understood. Dr. Maria Gonzalez from the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center arrived within an hour of Sarah's call, accompanied by her assistant, Jake Morrison. Both were experienced wildlife rehabilitators who had seen countless cases of injured raptors, but even they paused when they witnessed the scene in Sarah's backyard. Copper had not moved from his protective position beside the eagle, and the bird of prey remained calm in a way that defied everything they knew about wild eagle behavior in stressful situations. In 20 years of wildlife rehabilitation, I've never seen anything quite like this, Dr. Gonzalez murmured to Jake as they prepared their equipment. That eagle should be fighting for its life, trying to escape or defend itself. Instead, it's lying there as peacefully as if it were in its own nest. The challenge now is how to safely transport the eagle without causing additional trauma or disrupting whatever bond had formed between the two animals. Every time Dr. Gonzalez or Jake approached, Copper would stand and position himself protectively, not aggressively, but with clear intent that he was not going to abandon his charge. The eagle, sensing Copper's distress at the human's approach, would become more agitated as well. Sarah watched this delicate dance of interspecies communication and realized that Copper was going to have to be part of the solution. "What if Copper comes with us?" she suggested. "At least for the initial examination. It's clear they've formed some kind of bond, and separating them might cause more stress for both animals." Dr. Gonzalez considered this carefully. It was highly irregular to bring a domestic animal into a wildlife rehabilitation facility, but the circumstances were far from ordinary. The eagle's calm behavior in Kappa's presence could be crucial for its survival during the critical first hours of treatment. After a brief consultation with her supervisor via phone, she agreed to allow Kappa to accompany them, with strict protocols in place. The transport to the Wildlife Center was unlike anything the rehabilitation team had experienced. Kappa lay quietly in the back of the specialized vehicle, maintaining his vigil beside the eagle's carrier. The injured bird, which should have been panicked by the confinement and movement, remained remarkably calm. Dr. Gonzalez monitored its vital signs throughout the journey and was amazed to find that its heart rate and breathing remained stable, far better than typical for a wild eagle in such circumstances. At the Wildlife Center, the initial examination revealed the extent of the eagle's injuries. The bird, which Dr. Gonzalez determined to be a mature male she decided to call Thunder, had suffered a compound fracture of his left wing, likely from a collision with a vehicle. There were also signs of internal trauma, though thankfully no damage to vital organs. The prognosis was guarded but hopeful, provided Thunder could be kept calm and stable during the critical healing period. The most remarkable aspect of the examination was Thunder's behavior throughout the process. With Copper lying quietly nearby, the eagle allowed Dr. Gonzalez to conduct a thorough examination with minimal restraint. His eyes remained alert and aware, but there was none of the wild panic or aggressive behavior typical of injured raptors. It was as if Coppa's presence provided a sense of security that allowed Thunder to conserve his energy for healing rather than fighting. Over the following days, an extraordinary routine developed at the Wildlife Center. Sarah would bring Copper for daily visits, and the transformation in Thunder's condition was remarkable. On days when Copper was present, Thunder ate better, showed less stress, and his healing progressed more rapidly than Dr. Gonzalez had dared hope. The veterinary team began documenting this unusual case, recognizing that they were witnessing something that could contribute significantly to wildlife rehabilitation practices. Jake Morrison, who had initially been skeptical of the arrangement, became one of its strongest advocates as he observed the daily interactions between Copper and Thunder. "It's like watching a masterclass in animal empathy," he told Dr. Gonzalez after a particularly successful therapy session. "Copper seems to instinctively know when Thunder is having a difficult day, and he adjusts his behavior accordingly. Sometimes he's more active and playful, as if trying to encourage Thunder. Other times, he's perfectly still and calm, providing a sense of peace." The bond between the two animals deepened as Thunder's physical condition improved. Copper would lie beside Thunder's enclosure for hours, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed to elicit responses from the eagle. Thunder, in turn, would position himself as close to Copper as possible within his rehabilitation space, and his eyes would track Copper's movements with obvious interest and affection. Sarah found herself spending more and more time at the Wildlife Center, fascinated by the relationship that had developed between her dog and the magnificent bird of prey. She began bringing her laptop and working from the center's visitor area, allowing Copper to maintain his vigil while she handled her graphic design projects. The staff welcomed her presence, recognizing that the unusual arrangement was contributing significantly to Thunder's recovery. As weeks passed, Thunder's wing began to heal properly, and he started showing interest in flying again. The rehabilitation team constructed a larger flight enclosure where Thunder could begin the process of rebuilding his strength and flight capabilities. This presented a new challenge in maintaining the bond with Copper while allowing Thunder the space he needed for physical rehabilitation. Dr. Gonzalez designed an innovative solution that allowed Copper to remain near Thunder's flight enclosure without interfering with the eagle's exercise routine. A small observation area was created where Copper could lie and watch Thunder's flight practice, providing the emotional support that had become so crucial to the eagle's well-being while respecting the bird's need for wild behavior rehabilitation. The first time Thunder took flight in the rehabilitation enclosure, with Copper watching from his designated spot, was a moment that brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. Thunder's flight was still tentative and limited, but the grace and power that had been temporarily stolen by his injuries was clearly returning. Most remarkably, after each flight session, Thunder would land as close as possible to where Copper was positioned, as if seeking approval or sharing his accomplishment with his unlikely friend. As Thunder's flight capabilities improved, the rehabilitation team began preparing for the eventual goal of all their work, Thunder's return to the wild. This prospect brought mixed emotions for everyone involved, but none more so than for Copper, who seemed to sense that changes were coming. His behavior became more attentive and protective, as if he was trying to spend as much quality time as possible with Thunder before their inevitable separation. Dr. Gonzalez faced a dilemma that was both professional and deeply personal. Thunder's recovery had exceeded all expectations, largely due to the extraordinary bond he had formed with Copper. The eagle was now physically capable of surviving in the wild, and ethically, returning him to his natural habitat was the right thing to do. However, the emotional bond between the two animals was unlike anything she had witnessed in her career, and she worried about the psychological impact of separation on both animals. The decision was made to conduct Thunder's release in a location where Copper could be present, allowing for a natural conclusion to their remarkable relationship. A site was chosen in the Chugach National Forest, near a lake system that would provide ideal habitat for Thunder while being accessible for the release ceremony. Sarah, Copper, and the entire rehabilitation team made the journey on a crisp November morning, with Thunder traveling in a specialized carrier that allowed him to see Copper during the transport. At the release site, Thunder was transferred to a temporary holding enclosure that would allow him to acclimate to the outdoor environment before his release. Copper was positioned nearby, and the two animals spent several hours in quiet companionship, as if both understood that this was their farewell. Thunder's behavior was calm but alert, his eyes constantly scanning the sky and surrounding forest with the instincts that had been reawakened during his rehabilitation. When the moment came for Thunder's release, Dr. Gonzalez opened the enclosure door and stepped back. Thunder remained still for several long moments, looking first at the open door, then at Copper, then back at the vast sky above. Copper, as if understanding the significance of the moment, stood and wagged his tail gently, a gesture that seemed to give Thunder the encouragement he needed. Thunder stepped forward, spread his magnificent wings, and with a powerful thrust, launched himself into the Alaskan sky. His flight was strong and confident, carrying him high above the forest canopy where he circled several times before landing on a tall spruce tree overlooking the lake. From his perch, Thunder called out with the distinctive cry of a wild bald eagle, a sound that echoed across the water and seemed to announce his return to the natural world. But the story didn't end with Thunder's release. Over the following months, Sarah continued to bring Copper to the area where Thunder had been released, partly for hiking and exercise, but also with the hope of glimpsing their feathered friend. On their third visit, something extraordinary happened that would become the stuff of local legend. As Sarah and Copper were walking along the lakeshore, a familiar cry echoed from above. Thunder appeared, circling overhead before landing on a nearby tree. For several minutes, the three of them remained in this formation, Thunder perched above, Copper sitting alertly below, and Sarah watching in amazement. Then Thunder did something that defied all expectations. He flew down and landed on the ground, just outside of Copper's reach, and the two animals engaged in what could only be described as a reunion. Thunder's behavior was still wild and free, but there was an unmistakable recognition and affection in his interaction with Copper. The eagle would approach closely, then retreat, then approach again, as if testing the boundaries between his wild nature and his remembered bond with the golden retriever. Copper, for his part, remained calm and respectful, never trying to approach Thunder but clearly overjoyed to see his friend healthy and free. This pattern of encounters continued throughout the winter months. Sarah and Copper would visit the area regularly, and Thunder would often appear, sometimes alone, sometimes with other eagles. The Wildlife Center began documenting these encounters, recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in the study of interspecies relationships and wildlife rehabilitation. Dr. Gonzalez published a paper on Thunder and Copper's relationship, which gained international attention in wildlife rehabilitation circles. The case became a model for innovative approaches to wildlife care, demonstrating how the emotional well-being of injured animals could be just as important as their physical treatment. The paper also explored the implications of long-term bonds between wild and domestic animals, raising important questions about the nature of animal consciousness and emotional intelligence. As spring arrived in Alaska, Thunder's appearances became less frequent, which Dr. Gonzalez explained was natural as he established territory and potentially sought a mate. However, the bond formed during those critical months of rehabilitation had left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Copper seemed to carry himself with a new sense of purpose and awareness, as if his experience with Thunder had awakened something profound in his understanding of the natural world. Sarah found that the experience had changed her as well. She began volunteering regularly at the Wildlife Center, using her graphic design skills to create educational materials about wildlife rehabilitation and the importance of interspecies empathy. Her work helped raise awareness and funding for the center's programs, ensuring that other injured animals would receive the care they needed. The story of Copper and Thunder became part of the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center's educational programs, inspiring countless visitors to consider the complex emotional lives of animals and the unexpected connections that can form across species boundaries. School groups would visit specifically to hear about the golden retriever who refused to abandon an injured eagle, and the eagle who found healing through an unlikely friendship. One year after Thunder's release, on a warm June morning, Sarah and Copper were hiking in their familiar spot when they heard the distinctive call that had become so meaningful to them. Thunder appeared overhead, but this time he was not alone. Flying beside him was another bald eagle, slightly smaller, with the mottled brown and white plumage of a younger bird. Thunder had found a mate. The pair circled overhead several times, and Thunder's call seemed different now, more complex and varied. Dr. Gonzalez, who had joined Sarah and Copper for this anniversary visit, interpreted Thunder's vocalizations as a form of introduction, as if he was presenting his new mate to his old friends. The female eagle seemed curious about the humans and dog below, but maintained the appropriate wariness of a wild animal. As the eagle pair flew away together, heading toward what Dr. Gonzalez suspected was a nesting area deeper in the forest, there was a sense of completion to the remarkable story. Thunder had not only survived his injuries and returned to the wild, but he had successfully integrated back into eagle society and was now contributing to the continuation of his species. Copper watched the eagles disappear into the distance with what Sarah could only describe as contentment. His tail wagged slowly, and he looked up at her with bright eyes that seemed to reflect satisfaction with a job well done. The golden retriever who had refused to let go of an injured eagle had ultimately given his friend the greatest gift possible, the freedom to be wild while maintaining the memory of an extraordinary bond. The legacy of Copper and Thunder's relationship extended far beyond their individual story. The Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center implemented new protocols based on their experience, incorporating emotional support considerations into rehabilitation programs. Other wildlife centers around the world began experimenting with similar approaches, recognizing that the psychological well-being of injured animals could significantly impact their physical recovery and ultimate success in returning to the wild. Dr. Gonzalez continued to study the long-term effects of interspecies bonding in wildlife rehabilitation, building on the foundation established by Thunder and Copper's remarkable relationship. Her research contributed to a growing body of scientific literature exploring animal consciousness, emotional intelligence, and the complex social bonds that can form between different species under extraordinary circumstances. Sarah and Copper maintained their regular visits to Thunder's territory, not expecting encounters but finding peace in the knowledge that their friend was thriving in his natural habitat. Occasionally, they would spot eagles overhead and wonder if one of them might be Thunder, but the specific identity mattered less than the knowledge that their intervention had made a difference in the life of a magnificent wild creature. The story became a source of inspiration for wildlife rehabilitators around the world, demonstrating that sometimes the most effective medicine for an injured animal is not found in a veterinary manual, but in the compassionate heart of an unexpected friend. Copper's instinctive understanding of Thunder's needs and his unwavering commitment to providing comfort and support had created a new model for wildlife care that honored both the wild nature of the animals and their capacity for meaningful relationships. As the season cycled through another year, the tale of the golden retriever who brought home a bald eagle and refused to let go became part of Alaska's rich tradition of stories about the profound connections between humans, domestic animals, and the wild creatures that share their land. It served as a reminder that in a world often divided by differences, the capacity for empathy and compassion transcends species boundaries, creating bonds that can heal not just physical wounds, but the deeper injuries of fear, loneliness, and despair. The morning Copper first discovered Thunder beneath the spruce tree had seemed like any other Tuesday, but it had launched a journey that would touch the lives of everyone involved and contribute to a greater understanding of the complex emotional lives of animals. In refusing to let go of an injured eagle, a golden retriever had demonstrated that sometimes the most profound acts of healing come not from letting go, but from holding on with unwavering love and commitment until the moment when release becomes a gift rather than an abandonment. Thunder's successful return to the wild, his establishment of territory, and his formation of a mating bond represented the ultimate success of this unconventional rehabilitation approach. The eagle had not only survived his injuries but had thrived, carrying with him the memory of an extraordinary friendship that had sustained him through his darkest hours and prepared him for a bright future in the vast Alaskan wilderness. The bond between Copper and Thunder had proven that healing is not always a solitary journey, and that sometimes the most unlikely companions can provide exactly what is needed for recovery and renewal. Their story continued to inspire new approaches to wildlife care and deepened understanding of the emotional complexity of animal relationships, ensuring that their remarkable friendship would benefit countless other creatures for years to come. In the end, Copper had indeed brought home a bald eagle and refused to let go, but his steadfast loyalty had ultimately enabled the greatest letting go of all, the release of a healed and whole Thunder back into the wild sky where he belonged. Carrying with him the memory of a golden retriever's love and the knowledge that even in the wilderness, he was never truly alone.